So like Trial by Fire, one of the first nights I did pit security, uh, was AFI and Screw 32 on the same show.
Yeah.
And AFI had reached the point where they were headlining. Um, and AFI was selling out at that point. Like it was a packed show. And so they put me up on stage defending a microphone stand. So that was my whole purpose, was to sit in front of Jeff was playing bass for them then, was to sit in front of Jeff's mic stand and push the crowd back. And I'm like 16 years old. The next day, 2 days later, I'm walking to school on a Monday morning, and I could barely walk.
Hey, Shaun, how's it going, man?
Good, yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming to the Question and the Answers podcast. Shaun Osburn is the front person for the Middle-Aged Queers, who happen to be a band that I'm working with my label, Sell the Heart Records. And they're an East Bay queercore punk band that has kind of an interesting dynamic, kind of historic lineup if you imagine all the players involved. So Shaun has been in a few bands that people may know of, like The Cost, who were on Lookout Records, and Wet Nap, who were kind of a fabled East Bay punk band from back in the 90s, as well as members from Fang, Yaphet Kotto, and a few others to mention. But, I've certainly really enjoyed working with you and your band. And I'm excited to have you on the podcast. So tell me a little bit about Middle-Aged Queers and what you guys have been up to.
So Middle-Aged Queers started when our bassist Josh, who played in Fang, he played in the Saints, who, if you want to go down a fun and bizarre rabbit hole, look up the Saints. They had quite an interesting history, and a few other bands. He had posted on Facebook that just a question. He just said, "Queercore middle-aged band?" ? And a few of us, it actually was dozens of responses. And it was, the standard Facebook replies, like, "I'll play triangle," whatever. And I messaged him and said, "Yes, like, let's do this." And he'd mentioned to me right after that he had met Nikki at a barbecue in my backyard, and he was like, I want Nikki in on this. Like, I met Nikki and I want to be in a band with her playing drums. So we met up. Josh owns Peebles Donut Farm,
Yes,
over on San Pablo Avenue. And so we met in the utility closet of his bakery.
awesome.
And there was a drum set there, and there was a bunch of amps, and he just kind of had been storing them there, and so we kind of fleshed out a few songs, and we made it a regular thing. Like we started off every Wednesday. We'd all go down there, and because all of us had played in other bands before, people were asking questions, like, "Oh, I can't hang out with you on Wednesday. I got band practice." And then people would be like, "What? You're playing in a band again? Tell me more." I don't think any of us initially thought that we were going to do anything other than play house parties, maybe. This was like our fun dad rock band. And so we got offered a show at the Dildo Factory in Berkeley, which no longer exists. And so we took it, and then we quickly had to come up with a name. And so we we figured if we formed the band through social media, we might as well crowdsource the name. And I posted, what should we call our middle-aged queercore band? And the replies came in with, some funny, pithy responses, but there were multiples that were like, dude, that's your name. Your name is Middle-Aged Queers. And so we played our first show at the Dildo Factory, a band called Middle-Aged Queers, which is awesome.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
And people came to see us. And friends of ours, and then people who just were also interested in like, what the hell is this? There's a band called Middle-Aged Queers. Right after that, we got offered a show with the Pathogens at 924 Gilman Street, and that was kind of neat because the Pathogens are, they're definitely some East Bay royalty as far as the punk rock scene goes. Members of Econo-Christ and Tilt and Blatz, and so we played that show with them on a Sunday, and more people showed up, and we just kind of kept on doing that. We talked before about being in that band that just says yes to shows, and so for a year straight we just kept on saying yes. And wrote more songs. More people started coming to see us. And we played a show. It was a benefit for Radio Valencia over at, I can't even remember the name, the Knockout. That's what it was. We played a benefit show at Radio Valencia for Knockout. And it was a totally eclectic bill. Us being the new kids played first. And we played with a band called These Bastards. And we kind of bonded with them about, we have a t-shirt design that has the Golden Girls on it. Right. And so do they. And so we kind of bonded about that and, made friends. A few weeks later, we played a show at the Ivy Room, and the person doing sound, who I lived with and have known for years, came up and was like, hey, Shaun, what do you guys think about playing at Slim's, opening for Agent Orange? And I was like, I'm not going to say no to that. And they were like, yeah, so the bassist of These Bastards, is one of the managers at Slim's, and he said that we should get you on that show. So do you want to do it? Yeah. So it was a lot of stuff like that it took this fun dad band seriously for us. Mm-hmm. If you look at the discography of all four of us and what we have previously done, there's really no rhyme or reason why the four of us would be playing together. And there really is no direction that you would be like, oh, well, that's a conclusion. That's a logical thing, for these guys to play. We just sort of settled on let's just play fun punk rock, because that was always the driving factor of the band, was fun, to be fun and be joyous. So it's been kind of a wild ride. Right after that Slim show, we recorded the record that came out on Sell the Heart Records back in March. Yeah. Literally the next day. So, some of us with hangovers, all of us with very little sleep, went in to House of Faith over in Oakland, run by Bart Thurber. And we took the money that we'd gotten from the Ivy Room show and the Slim show and paid him $400 mm-hmm. To record that. And we thought we were going to record a demo, and maybe there would be enough songs on it that were good enough takes in 8 hours that we could put out a 7-inch. Mm-hmm. That was the goal. that maybe we could do that. And Bart is efficient. And we were too. I mean, like we kept a lot of the scratch tracks. I would say like 90% of my vocals were just, like not necessarily like nailed it, but like that works. Let's try and get as much done as possible. And when we were mixing it, we were sitting back in the little break room at House of Faith, and we were trying to decide if we were going to do the 7-inch idea still, or if we should just release them all at once. And Mag and I both, our guitarist, are huge Motley Crue fans.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying how, when Motley Crue released their Too Fast for Love record, they expected it to be their demo tape. They didn't expect to release it. And it was rushed and unpolished, and that's my favorite record by them. I think they continuously get worse over the years, but that one is just. And I just joked that like instead of Too Fast for Love, this was our Too Fag for Love.
Mm-hmm.
And once I said that, there was no putting the genie back in the bottle. Like I tried to retract it. And they're like, no, that's good. We're going to roll with it. And it's going to be your crotch. So,
yeah.
That's how that record came to be. Yeah. It's been a fun ride.
Cool. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I'm a believer in what Middle-Aged Queers has got going on. And like, I was thrilled when you guys were interested in working with the label in some capacity. And, I know you guys did either a Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I think it was Indiegogo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you were self-funding the record, but when I put out the call to like see if bands were interested in like working with my label, and you kind of piqued your interest, and yeah, it was cool that we were able to like come together and kind of make that work. I wanted to talk a little bit about like being in a queercore band. I mean, that is like its own little like kind of nebulous little world within the punk rock scene. And right now there are plenty of bands that identify as queer, but I mean, how many are out there like really taking like that moniker of queercore? Like, I mean, do you feel like that's like still like a genre that's like very relevant at this point? Like,
I think that there is so much nostalgia attached to it for a lot of people. As soon as I say it or hear it, it invokes like very fond memories of the 90s, when it was very clear that like this was a scene, it was a movement, we had festivals. I think more so in coastal cities, I'm finding it's just sort of a given that like there's going like, or not a given, but it's not a surprise when there's a member of a band that's queer. And I've kind of, if you look back at like sort of the evolution of the term and like punk rock history, there have been notable players in bands, especially like, front people in bands who were queer.
Sure.
And, it's sort of a like, is a band a queercore band just because they have a queer member? Are they a queercore band just because they say they are, but they have straight people who are playing with them? If you look at Pansy Division is probably the most notable queercore band, but they've had plenty of straight identifying drummers, and they currently have a straight guy playing guitar. So, it's, I kind of am of the opinion that, if you identify as such, then you are. Like I have no interest in sort of like gatekeeping the term. I think if you're going to be a queer punk, there's no like cash and prize benefits waiting for you on the other side. Like there's not really like you can't be pulling a con job on like being in a queercore band. I mean, I guess you could, but it's not lucrative.
Right. Well, and I mean, clearly as time has, passed since like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and you've had musicians and artists, get a little bit more comfortable with, letting people know, about how they identify themselves, and you know getting it more into like the art itself. um like would you say that currently there's still a lot of barriers that are having to be breached for like queer identifying musicians within like the punk rock scene, or the independent music scene? Or do you feel like most of those have already been kind of transcended, and it's mostly readily available to anyone that wants to be in that world, without much of a problem, and I know that that's not necessarily like, it's probably a loaded question, but
Mhm.
I'm just curious to know like where you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you're always going to have people in the punk rock scene who are just instigators, right? Like you're gonna have like the mentors or people who are just trying to push that just for the sake of being edgy. Um, but I don't really think that that's the stuff like that is outlier territory. For the most part, like within the scene, what I've noticed and I'm really excited about is the young people who are booking shows and playing music. They don't give a fuck about how we used to do things. Like, this is theirs, they've got it. Like, sit back, old man. And I think that that's awesome. Like, I posted something along this lines like about a year ago. Like, the future of punk rock is being made by like genderless teens on shitty computers, and they don't care about your gatekeeping regarding like how it needs to be real drums or how keyboards aren't punk. They're gonna do whatever the fuck they want, um, and you can see that even like here in the East Bay scene. There are a lot of trans and gender nonconforming volunteers at Gilman now. And I was one of the only queer people volunteering back then. There were like three of us who were there on a regular basis volunteering.
Mhm.
Now, like, the vast majority of kids running the show, literally running the show at Gilman, identify as queer. And it's made Gilman more interesting. Um, I gotta hand it to the kids that they're doing it. They're doing it right. And with our guard, there were a lot of folks because it was the early to mid '90s when I spent most of my time at Gilman Street, and that's when you had Nirvana and then Jawbreaker and then Green Day all just kind of like collide into each other. And the club got a lot of attention, and we had a lot of bleeding deacons kind of dictating how things should go to us, and they were worried that their baby was going to die in our hands, that we were going to fuck things up. Now the people running the show at Gilman are like, we got this, like, it's cool. And there are those of us in the wings, ready to be called upon when needed, but it's definitely a new guard over there.
Yeah, no, I've certainly noticed that as well, and I'm with you where I certainly feel that the younger generation of people within like the punk rock community who are taking the reins, with regards to spaces like Gilman, or really virtually any place that wants to be able to be inclusive, well, especially places that want to be inclusive, they absolutely like are doing it the way that they want to do it, and like that absolutely could mean tearing down the old ways, or just not conforming to those old ways. And
Yeah, I love that that the city of Berkeley hated Gilman, absolutely hated it. Um, I remember us cackling at, I forget which supervisor or city council person said it, but called the Gilman Street Project a festering sore. Um, and now the Gilman Street Project is like one of the crown jewels of Berkeley. Because it has such a rich history of so many artists coming out of there,
Right.
and that it built a community for a lot of people. I mean, I was there every weekend for years. It didn't matter who was playing. Like, you know, I'd get out of school on Friday, take Bart to the Shattuck stop, skateboard up to Telegraph, get a slice of, either it was usually fat slice, hang out at the steps of Sproul Plaza and wait until it was time to skateboard to Gilman and sign up for, what I was going to do that night. I generally wanted to work side door first half or hand stamp for the last half.
Yeah.
Like, that was my thing until eventually I started stage managing and being a booker there. They definitely doled out responsibilities as saw fit. When I was like 15 or 16, I was like doing pit security. I made such a fuss over this. I really wanted to do security. And it drove me nuts that like I would volunteer to do security and they would always pick the like straight buff dudes who were usually like a few years older than me. But I was like, well, I want to do it too. Come on. Like I wanted to be out and about during my volunteer shift. And I didn't care if my entire volunteer shift was doing security for the entire night. I wanted to move around.
Right.
And I did. So like Trial by Fire, one of the first nights I did pit security, was AFI and Screw 32 on the same show.
Yeah.
And AFI had reached the point where they were headlining. And AFI was selling out at that point. Like it was a packed show. And so they put me up on stage defending a microphone stand. So that was my whole purpose, was to sit in front of Jeff was playing bass for them then, was to sit in front of Jeff's mic stand and push the crowd back. And I'm like 16 years old. The next day, 2 days later, I'm walking to school on a Monday morning and I could barely walk because I'd used like all of my lower body strength to like brace myself and push the crowd back. But yeah, that's good times.
I mean, yeah, I was actually just about to kind of segue to another question regarding your experiences, like being a volunteer at Gilman. Are there any like notable shows, both on like the like, holy shit, that was incredible, like I'm gonna remember that for the rest of my life as a rad show, and then on the other side, like, oh shit, like that was horrible, like, ugh, like I don't know. Would love to hear if you have any stories like that to share.
I booked a show where Noisegate was this band that was like members of Neurosis, and their whole thing was like they played noise, obviously, but then they had these projectors behind them just on a loop of some of like the most demented, twisted shit. And it was so loud that you would hallucinate. Like you'd be staring at this stuff and you'd like just start losing your mind. And I thought it'd be really cool to book an all noise show. So I found people who, and like I had Eric Core open because at the time Eric Core wasn't as like refined with a full band. It was him doing these gruff guttural vocals over like a drop, I think it was like drop B tuning guitar. And then I had, like in my head, this was like an amazing show showcasing the diversity of noise. And I think there were like 25 people through the door.
Okay. Yeah.
It was and it was just not well attended. It was not well received. There was a band that drove up from LA to play, and I was very apologetic to them. Called Spastic Colon,
Oh
who are
yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember that. I remember that band.
playing with like tape loops and stuff. Yeah, I was really I really thought in my heart's heart that there were enough weirdos out there that wanted to like listen to noise all night, and Berkeley
Nope.
was just not ready. um, Probably my favorite show that I booked there was, so people were really into doing like, like Slap a Ham, Fiesta Grande, and like that kind of led to more theme nights, even my own theme night. And I think probably like I think I did this in like '98. I was getting really tired of the constant like, this is a ska show, this is a hardcore show. That I wanted to like get things back to Gilman's eclecticness.
Mm-hmm.
The early days, it would be like Primus with MDC, or just like the most baffling bills. And originally the concept of Gilman was that you wouldn't get to know who was playing. You just showed up and there was a show. And so I booked Babyland, who is this electronic industrial, they call themselves electronic junk punk band from Los Angeles. Nuclear Rabbit, who was like a funk thrash band.
Absolutely.
Exhumed, which is a grindcore band. Magnum, which was an electronic like rap group, and they had like 2 live drummers and then like 2 rappers, and Your Mother, who is East Bay legends. Now some of them are in the band The Love Songs. But what was so fantastic about that show was it was packed. And all of those bands could have drawn on their own. Mm-hmm. But what was so fantastic about that is that everybody brought their own audience that was so just into that genre and had never heard of the other bands before. Mm-hmm. So, you had like these people who were like, goths essentially for Babyland, like headbanging to a band like Exhumed. And stuff like that was really fun, but that was probably the most memorable.
That sounds awesome. I definitely kind of, wish, that more shows were a little bit more based around an eclectic lineup. Because I definitely agree that it feels like there was a time where there was just a switch that happened where every show had to be streamlined to the exact same genre or sound. And I mean, I understand that a lot of that just comes from like trying to get people through the door to pay for the price of admission, to cover all of your costs. And I mean, I guess, I've been a promoter before. I've had to deal with that. I understand that that's sometimes the game you have to play. But when I'm like a person who's just attending a show, I don't necessarily want to see all the bands on that bill. I'd rather see a bunch of bands that are a little bit more eclectic, and kind of make it more fun. But I mean, that's just
also
my own
really, from a musician standpoint, like it's also really difficult for me. It was playing in a band like The Cost to show up, and this happened constantly because we were on lookout. Mm-hmm. We'd show up and it was us booked with every pop punk band like within like a 2-hour radius of the city we were playing in, because it was back when you didn't get to stream entire albums. So we were getting booked just because we were on lookout and from Oakland, and people were like, oh, there's a lookout band coming, you want to play? And so it would be really uncomfortable to be like, yeah, all right, so we're going to disappoint you now. Here's a bunch of stuff that like, yeah.
Well, because
so I get it. I get wanting to play with like sounding bands.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of nights on tour, like we were kind of the bummer, like the party poopers of the evening.
Well, and for anyone that doesn't know, like the costs were kind of like in that whole scrams, kind of genre, right?
I love that scrams is a term now.
Yeah, apparently it's a term now, but I mean, I guess like screamo, for lack of a better word, but
Yeah. I think the term screamo got taken, like got appropriated to stuff like Atreyu and Thursday.
right.
And so the idea with the Scrams moniker is that like it's differentiating it. I don't know, like we called it hardcore.
Right.
Like probably my favorite band ever is Mohinder. And they definitely are like quintessential screamo or scrams. But nobody called them that. They played with other hardcore bands. Like, I saw Mohinder open for Spitboy. It was just, they were just doing hardcore faster,
right.
One of those like things where like, after the fact, we've got to like come up with a classification for it.
Sure. Well, hey, I speaking of like favorites, one of the things that I kind of wanted to ask you about was, currently the Bay Area scene is, it's, I mean, everyone's kind of at a stall right now because of what's going on with the pandemic, but, it's still buzzing with like plenty of great bands. And I was wondering if you might be able to name a few bands that you are aware of that other people may not be aware of that you think should be aware of. And who are those bands?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say Lollygaggers and Homobiles. And they're both of them are queercore bands, and I think that's something that I wanted to get into was queercore as an umbrella term doesn't necessarily mean a specific sound. There is no queercore sound. I would love to put out a comp called now that's what I call queercore, just because like it would be like a folk punk band and then like a grindcore band right afterwards. But Lollygaggers just self-released a 4-song 7-inch called Cavity Search. And then Homobiles, they've been around for a little bit longer. I want to say that they've been around for like 4 years now. And they have like a pretty solid lineup now. And we played with them at El Rio, and that was such a ridiculously like fun show. We were supposed to play with them. Our record release was supposed to be with them,
right?
And unfortunately, that has been postponed
until the end of March.
Until the end of March, yeah.
Right, until the end of March.
End of March, 2022.
Right.
I've been really digging the latest Hammer Bombs.
Oh yeah.
The Goodbye Dreamboat. I'd streamed. I'd streamed the EP that they put out before that. And Pathogens. Like, but it's just such solid players, and like the sweet and sour of Cinder and Jesse doing dueling vocals is nice. And the music is not derivative for either of their old projects. It just works really, really well. And they're a hoot to see live. They're super fun and energetic.
Absolutely.
Up in Sacramento, Add a Lemon.
Mm-hmm.
Very pop punk. Like they have been drinking heartily from the well of like Blink 182 and Screeching Weasel, and but it's all good. Like I don't know. Like I said, my favorite band is like this screamy hardcore band from the 90s that like put out a few 7-inches, but like fuck if I don't listen to a bunch of pop punk too.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Adelemon, Copy Slut, who is I would still call them queercore, but there is very little punk rock going on. It's very bluesy. It's very
It's kind of like a
sexy.
cabaret almost vibe, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah. When
they
you see them live, I don't no spoilers because like we're gonna get back to things and they're gonna play, but like when I see them live, I'm always like, oh, okay, like this has like reached my level of comfort. And then they just like push it a little more. And then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you did that to me. Let's keep going. They're a good
yeah,
time.
I was at that show at Gilman. I think it was like the last. I think it was the last show you guys played, right?
Yeah, Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it was the Valentine's Day, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, they performed, and yeah, I that was the first time I had ever really heard them before, and like I thoroughly enjoyed the whole show, and I think that they're going to turn a lot of heads, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they all live together. And so
Right.
they're like still releasing music. They just shot a music video. Like they're just on it.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, it's
yeah.
really great music too.
Yeah.
Like on top
No,
on yeah.
they're definitely some skilled players.
Yeah,
Um,
they're fantastic. Yeah.
Also, as far as Bay Area music goes, State Faults, who are actually from Santa Rosa, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I know those guys. Mhm. Good guys.
that, yeah, I think like within like a 4 month period, I saw like every single Bay Area show that they played.
Mm.
I picked up that record. I walked into Gilman because someone was like, "Why aren't you at this show?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they were like, "State Faults." Never heard of them.
Mm.
So I just drove because I had nothing going on that night, and I walked into them like just starting off their set, and like as I'm approaching the stage, I was like, oh shit, this is good." Um, that new record of theirs, I think it's called Clairvoyant. I picked it up. Is really good. Along those same lines, and I saw them play with State Faults is Hawak,
Mm.
um, and they're Bay Area's own all Asian screamo band, or scrams as the kids are calling it, and they're fun as shit, and they just put out a new single. I think it was stuff that was recorded before the pandemic, and they had someone mix it, and it's mwah.
Okay. Well, that's definitely a rad list of bands for people to check out, and we'll make sure to include links to all those bands for anything that we can find online for them. But um, moving on to my final formal question for you tonight, and this is something that I've been asking every guest, and I know that for some people it's not a very nice question to ask, but I always just get genuinely curious. I'd love to know: do you have 5 records that you would consider to be like your top 5 desert island, could never get tired of listening to records, and what are those?
Oh, okay. Um, First is Motley Crue's "Too Fast for Love," but it has to be the Leather Records mix, the
Okay.
OG pressing, because it has the song "Stick to Your Guns" on it,
Mm.
and the remixed and repressed version on Elektra Records does not contain that song. Um, Second would be the Mohinder and Nitwit split.
Mm.
It's a split 7-inch. It's on 33 RPM, so you get those extra minutes. But all of those songs slap. Um, Faith No More's "We Care a Lot." This is getting more difficult as my choices narrow down. Uh, Carcasses, "Necroticism," "Descanting the Insalubrious."
Okay.
What would be the
I can't say that
fifth?
I'm very familiar with that band. I mean, I've heard of Carcass, but I don't think I've ever listened to them.
I'm going to force Carcass upon you.
I can't wait.
They pioneered 2 different subgenres of metal, um, that being doom and grindcore.
All right, I'm intrigued.
Um, uh, Babyland, "You Suck Crap," but the CD version, not the LP version. I'm not a big CD fan, but the CD version has like a bunch of EPs on it. And if I'm going to be on an island, I want the long play.
Okay. Yeah. Great list. We'll definitely try to add the links to, for people to check those out as well, in case anyone's curious. I will definitely be listening to Carcass later tonight to find out what
Hell yeah.
about all the magic of Carcass. But yeah, Shaun, it's been great to talk to you. And, I hope that, this whole pandemic thing is, been treating you and yours okay, and that you're staying safe. We've been pretty good constant communication. So, great to hear that, you're able to work and everything. But on that note, we're going to leave everyone with the latest song or the latest single from the Middle-Aged Queers, Too Fag for Love. It's called The Theme Song. And it's a crowdsourced video that the band put together. You want to talk about that real quickly?
Oh yeah. So we initially had planned on shooting this video at Gilman with all of us in like 80s hair metal drag, which would have been a fun show to shoot with like pyro and smoke machines and all that. But instead, because we couldn't do that anymore and we wanted to release something, we crowdsourced videos from people, and we got stuff from, we thought it was going to be like our friends from the Bay Area, but we got stuff from like, the East Coast, from the Philippines, from the UK. It was kind of wild to see like the submissions coming in. And it was really fun putting it together. And the first single was cute and fun because the internet reacts so well to cats. It was for Gary's Making Biscuits. And I knew that that's the one that I wanted to start things off, because the internet and cats, like, but what was so much fun about this one is that was for me seeing people. There was one guy who sent a video of him playing guitar along with the entire song. Just sort of like the creative direction that people took, because we gave no instruction. We were just like, lip sync and send us the video. And you actually start off this video too.
I do.
It's going to be a shot of you in that direction of your office. So that'll be fun.
I know. So this might look very familiar to people who are seeing this video for the first time, but no, I think it's a rad video and well done. But yeah, man, you take good care, and thanks again for coming on the podcast, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.